There is so much work to be done. The unfortunate fact is that women are still not paid equally to that of their male counterparts. Women still are not present in equal numbers in business or politics, and globally, women's education, health, and the violence against them is worse than that of men. This year, March 12th is Pay Equity Day for women. This means that women must work until March 12th of 2024 to be paid what their male counterparts were paid in 2023. For full-time women in the workforce, women are paid 84% of their male counterparts. These percentages get worse for various categories of women, such as women of color and working mothers. Here at the Chamber, our work focuses on women at work as we bring our amazing community of women in business who are a part of our Business Forward females together today to celebrate International Women's Day. In the workplace, we want to forge inclusive work cultures where women's careers thrive and their achievements are celebrated. The theme of this year's International Women's Day is Inspire Inclusion. When we inspire others to understand and value women's inclusion, we forge a better world. The concept behind Inspire Inclusion is to emphasize the importance of diversity and empowerment in all aspects of society. This year's campaign theme underscores the crucial role of inclusion in achieving gender equality. It calls for action to break down barriers, challenge stereotypes, and create environments where all women are valued and respected. Inspire Inclusion encourages everyone to recognize the unique perspectives and contributions of women from all walks of life, including those from marginalized communities. So as you head back to your work tomorrow and in the coming weeks and months, consider how you might inspire inclusion in your sphere of work. The Quarter 9 495 Regional Chamber presents a variety of awards throughout the year celebrating individuals and organizations for making an impact with their business and communities. In 2018, the Chamber established the Business Forward Female Awards to honor women for their success in business, contributions to their community, and personal strengths that inspire or positively influence others around them. I now have the honor to present our 2024 Business Forward Females Awards. Our first award being presented today is to the 2024 Woman-Owned Business of the Year. And it's my pleasure to announce Melissa Boyer, President and owner of YoYO Ma Bakery, as the award recipient. Melissa Boyer grew up surrounded by good food and strong women. Her mother, now a yummy grandmommy, was a caterer, her aunt a chocolatier, and her grandmother an amazing at-home baker. It was Grandma Irene who passed on to Melissa her famous, unique, and always a crowd-pleasing chocolate brownie recipe. After years of baking the brownies herself, Melissa knew that the delicious treats were destined to be shared. More than 17 years ago, Melissa started her brownie business in her home kitchen as a single mom with triplets that were 2 years old at the time. Great and amazing. She baked and sold over 20 different varieties. From 2004 to 2012, she grew her home-based business through her website, farmers markets and fairs, and started to ship them nationwide. The growth of her business got to the point that she had 2 extra ovens in her basement and extra refrigerators in her garage filled to the brim with eggs and butter. When the business grew to a point where she could no longer operate it out of her home, she made the decision to open her own retail location and expanded her business to offering more than just brownies. She found a great retail location on East Main Street in Westboro, hired talented staff, and expanded her home with made treats to custom cakes, cupcakes, cookies, and so much more. Now, in addition to selling products through her retail business, she offers mail order, corporate gifting, wholesale, fundraising, farmers markets, and classes. As a result, this small business owner has built her women-owned business into a $1 million company today. Melissa enjoys spending time with her children, running, golf, boxing, and giving back to her local community and nonprofit organizations. Melissa has raised $20,000 for Compassionate Care ALS, $5,000 for Boston Children's Hospital League, donates gift certificates and baked goods to local schools, churches, and synagogues, donates platters of baked goods to the Chamber's member ribbon cuttings, and has facilitated fundraisers for Westboro Young Basketball Association, Westboro Little League, Boy Scouts, and Lions Club. Currently, Melissa is participating in the Punch for Parkinson's as a boxer and fundraiser on behalf of the organization at the same time, and we are excited for her on the road to her first fight in the ring in April. Her generous spirit also included a donation of a Yummy Mummy brownie to all of you that is in your goodie bag that you will be going home with tonight. BFFs, as you have just heard, Melissa is an accomplished business leader and generous community supporter. And it is with great pleasure that we present the 2024 Women-Owned Business of the Year Award to Melissa Royer of Yummy Mummy Bakery. Our next award being presented today is our 2024 BFF Leadership Award. This award is also being presented to another woman-owned business who started a nonprofit organization to help women. In the U.S. alone, approximately 264,000 women are diagnosed with breast cancer each year. Massachusetts is in the top 5 states with the highest population of diagnoses of breast cancer. The physical effects of this illness might be commonly acknowledged, but the emotional trauma is equally impactful. The journey is not just a fight for their health, but also a financial struggle, dealing with the overwhelming costs of treatment, medical bills, and missed days of work. Michelle Power, the founder and CEO of Positively for Pink, also known as P4P, believes that no one should have to face it alone. In 2018, Michelle established her nonprofit with the mission of supporting low-income, underserved women in Massachusetts suffering from breast cancer. Few people have the qualifications to take on such an endeavor. Prior to starting P4P, Michelle was a psychotherapist for 25 years and served as clinical supervisor for Spectrum Health Services Systems, Spectrum Health Systems. She helped develop the Family Stabilization Program at Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children and has maintained a private practice in the same area for over 30 years and held the title of Staff Sergeant in the United States Air Force. In addition, Michelle has years of entrepreneurial experience, having co-founded a mold remediation company and the former owner of a garden center in Worcester. Since starting her nonprofit only 6 years ago, P4P has awarded nearly $400,000 in grants to women suffering from breast cancer. The grants have helped women with mortgages, groceries, car repairs so they can get to their appointments, co-pays, and other comforts needed due to their diagnosis. The remarkable difference about P4P, they are the only nonprofit in America that supports women who choose either holistic and or traditional care, and support women up to 6 months after treatment if they need it. Michelle is the only employee of her nonprofit and raises money for her organization by recruiting sponsors and hosting fundraisers that include golf tournaments, a 5K race, concerts, pickleball, and cornhole tournaments, and her drag queen meat raffles that have been very successful. In addition, with her dedication to the marketing and growing awareness of her nonprofit, she has attracted nearly 50 businesses and organizations who have hosted their own fundraisers on behalf of P4P, totaling $56,000 in donations in the last 2 years. To continue with additional awareness of P4P and encourage more involvement, Michelle launched their newest campaign called Support Your Breasting. Michelle created and branded Support Your Breasting t-shirts, keychains, water bottles, and phone cases to honor those who support her women. Her goal is also to forge new partnerships with local businesses, high schools, and colleges to host fundraisers by selling their keychains in support of her women. In your goodie bag, you will find that Michelle has included a P4P keychain uniting all of us as honorary breasties for her cause. Outside of running running her nonprofit, Michelle has volunteered for Catholic Charities, feeding the homeless, and is a volunteer for the Chamber. She enjoys golfing, pickleball, gardening, and spending time with her wife, family, and friends. One of her greatest joys in her life is the love she has for her 2 dogs, Sophie and Gracie, who were the positively for her nonprofit and honorary board of directors, for providing such love and comfort while grieving the loss of her own mother to pancreatic cancer. BFFs, it is with great pleasure that I present the 2024 BFF Outstanding Leadership Award to Michelle Power, Positively for Pink, for creating an organization to help other women who are in dire financial need in their fight surviving breast cancer. Michelle, please come forward to accept the award. Congratulations to both our very deserving award recipients. We're so thrilled that you're a part of our community. It is now my great honor to introduce today's guest speaker. Joyce Kulhawik is best known as the Emmy Award-winning arts and entertainment anchor for CBS-Boston WBZ-TV from 1981 to 2008, and has covered local and national events from Boston and Broadway to Hollywood, including the Oscars, Emmys, Tonys, and Grammys. As the first arts reporter critic in the U.S. to appear every weeknight as part of a local TV news team, Kulhawik gave journalistic structure to arts reporting and greatly enhanced her station's commitment to community service. Joyce is currently president of the Boston Theater Critics Association, the Boston Society of Film Critics. Since 2013, she has hosted the Simmons University Leadership Conference here and abroad, the longest-running conference for professional women in the world. She has co-hosted nationally syndicated movie review programs with Roger Ebert and Leonard Maltin. You can hear Joyce on Boston's local NPR station, GBH Radio 89.7, The Culture Show, weekdays at 2 p.m., and find her reviews online at joyceschoices.com. In 2007, Joyce was among the inaugural inductees into the Massachusetts Broadcasters Hall of Fame. In 2010, she received the New England Emmys Governor's Award for her distinguished career, which includes additional Emmys for the WBZ series campaign, You've Gotta Have Arts, and team coverage of the World Trade Center attacks, where she was among the first reporters on the scene. She is a 3-time cancer survivor and has testified before Congress on the 20th anniversary of the National Cancer Act, chaired Massachusetts Spring Fundraising Campaign for 25 years, and helped launch the American Cancer Society's first Hope Lodge in Boston, which provides free lodging for cancer patients and their families. The American Cancer Society honored Joyce with its National Bronze Medal for her work, and she has received additional recognition awards in Boston for her broadcasting career and raising awareness in the fight against cancer. BFFs, please join me in welcoming to the podium an amazing female trailblazer, Joyce Kulhawik.
I feel like I'm in very distinguished company today. Melissa, congratulations. Michelle, congratulations. Very impressive. I know a little bit about your various works. Nothing about boxing, so I'm admiring those arms. When I saw you get up, I said, wow, that woman works off those brownies. And I don't cook, but I do bake, and I'm dying to taste those brownies. And Michelle, I can't say enough about, how much the work you do for cancer patients means to anybody who's suffered through that disease. It's an epidemic, and there isn't anybody in this room who has not been touched by it or doesn't know somebody in the family or a friend or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. We are all sisters and brothers under that unfortunate umbrella, but there are hidden gifts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. I thought a lot about what I would say today. First of all, I just want to begin by saying, Happy Women's History Month! I love women. I have always loved women. I went to women's college. I went to Catholic school. I thought I was going to be a nun. I loved them. I did. This was serious till I was 16. And then they changed the habit, and I kind of lost my vocation. I used to love those very dramatic clothes, but I was very persuaded by their focus and their commitment and their quiet, gentle service and their commitment to something spiritual and something beyond the tangible which you could see. I found them very, very inspiring. And they were like my next door neighbors, because I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, a tough working class town with working class parents, and we all worked all the time. I worked from the time I was 11 years old. I was my parish church organist and soloist. I was always a singer and a musician, and you have to know something about me right from the get-go. I know nothing about business. I mean, I know I'm not particularly entrepreneurial. So I might be asking some of you for advice at some point along the way. I have no idea how to turn anything I do into a business. But I know something about women and strong women, and I come from a long line of strong women, and I owe them everything. In ways that still reveal themselves to me over time. I think back on my mother, who I just lost in 2020 at the age of 92, and how strong she was. I mean, I come from a long line of working women. And when I say working, all women are working all the time. We know this. Women still bear the children, women are working at home, women are working outside. I mean, I'm still trying to get over having triplets and starting a company. Can't even compute that. Extraordinary. But women are, the hardest working people in showbiz. We do everything. And we wield power and we approach leadership in very different ways than men do. Which doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It's just a different way to go about things. And I always find a room full of women, or women together, as a very powerful and almost immovable force when women take the reins. And when you see a culture that is sort of falling behind, it's because half of the population has been disenfranchised or disempowered in some way. You can pretty much evaluate how a culture is doing by the state of the women in that culture. And I have no idea why people aren't, wiser about that, but there are very strong influences that we need to very, very steadily and relentlessly, continually stand up against. And so this brings me back to the women in my life, my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother was one of the first members of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. She was an Italian immigrant that came over, and she did the fine work on coats. And she worked in a factory in New York and took the train in every single day. And then she'd come home and she'd tend the garden, and she raised my mother, and she did that as a single mother for a while, and then she remarried. But she was she ended up starting a coat factory, which was unheard of in the 1940s and the 1950s. My mother was a working woman outside the home. In the 1950s, she was a full-time executive secretary at Sikorsky Aircraft. And this was a time when women were not really doing a lot of work outside the home. But for me, she was incredibly inspiring. She would get dressed every day. I thought she was so beautiful and glamorous, and she always had her hair done, and she always wore high heels, and she was very outspoken. And the great thing in my household was that my father was so proud of her. He so loved that my mother was this outspoken working woman raising 2 children at home as well, and he was a very hands-on dad. So I think I just want to hang on to that idea, because ultimately down the road, this is all about men and women working together. This is about allyship. Although I have to say, I really love being with just women in our space sometimes. Isn't it great? I mean, because you can just totally be who you are, unencumbered in certain ways by things that may, exercise a certain kind of power over you that you may not even be fully aware of. But I think women have an easier time finding their voices when we're all together. I know that was always true for me. My mother had no trouble following her voice or finding her voice. My mother spoke up about everything, and I think of 2 stories off the top of my head. One was that when the garbage pickup was really slow at our house, and they stopped picking up the garbage, they stopped picking up the trash, my mother called the town hall, and she said, hey, they haven't picked this up in a while. And they said, yeah, we'll get to it. And I think another week went by, and my mother ended up piling all the garbage into the backseat of the car and drove it to City Hall and deposited it there herself. That was my mom. My mother, when she was taking care of her mother in the hospital, had to, of course, deal with a lot of the doctors there, some of whom were lovely and some who were absolute egomaniacs and had no use for her. And my mother was questioning this doctor about something, about the diagnosis or the treatment or something, and he turned to her and he said, "Who are you to question me?" And my mother, and I thought, oh, you don't even know who you're talking to. Get ready, pal. My mother said, "Who are you? Who are you? Everybody gets questioned. Jesus Christ was questioned." We were a family of devout Catholics, and she wasn't taking the name of the Lord in vain. But yeah, truer words were never spoken. I don't know that guy ended up in therapy or what. So I come by my sort of aggressiveness, my outspokenness, very honestly. And though I don't know that I've blazed any trails, but I do know what I have been able to do, and that is to follow my voice, to figure out who I really am. And people throw this word authentic around now. It drives me crazy. Everything has to be authentic. But you know what? It's really true. It's important to be true to yourself and listen to your voice. I once went to a workshop on intuition, and the person teaching it said the intuition is that voice that answers you before you even finish asking the question. The answer is there, and you know it in yourself. And it's very difficult sometimes to hear that especially now, the clutter of everything that's going on now, where there's so much input on social media and, 1 million TV channels and, all of it. And the population has doubled in the last 50 years. I mean, there are just many more people and much more stuff in the world. And sometimes it's hard to navigate your way through it. But I do find that this is the source of all power. And it is something that my mother, I think, instinctively absorbed. And it's something that I gradually had to come to hear myself, for myself. And it helped me in 2 ways. In the 2, I would say, 2 big stories of my life. And one is my professional career. Now, as I said, I know nothing about business. I did very well in school, but I was always drawn to the arts. And this was something that just made sense to me. It was something that I just always felt there was more truth in a novel than the newspaper. That may be even truer now than ever before. And so I studied everything that had to do with the arts. I studied music and dance, and I played the piano, and as I said, I thought I was either going to be a nun or an actress. It was one of the two. And then I didn't become a nun, but I was voted president of my junior class in high school. And I suddenly realized, and I took to it just like that. And I realized, I need to be out in the world. I need to be out. So I was following, sort of instinctively what I felt just sort of came naturally to me. I went on to college. I went to Simmons College. It's now Simmons University. And I studied English, literature, minored in music, thought, I could maybe teach or something like that. But I didn't really want to be a teacher. I just didn't know what I would do. And it was finally in my last year, and I realized halfway through my senior year, I guess I've got to get a job. But I don't know what to do with all of this. I like movies and theater, and I like to analyze poetry, and I'm writing about, Donne and Keats, and I like to play the piano, and what do you do with any and all of that? So I decided to go on to grad school. Keep studying, stay in school. And I got a master's degree in English and education, and when I got out, I still did not know what I was going to do. I was really kind of having to, I bought that book, What Color is Your Parachute, which I think is still out there, the 100 millionth edition. But it's a good question, and I just didn't know. But I knew I wanted to sort of float around and try different things. So I ended up in a place that made TV and radio commercials called Mass Casting Corporation. And I thought, that sounds like fun. I just wanted to do something easy and fun before I settled down to do something serious. And I didn't get to do anything serious there. I in fact, was the receptionist, and I got to make coffee and, whatever. And one day, two men walked into the office and said, "Hey, would you like to be in a TV commercial?" And I said, "Oh, sure." They promptly said, "Well, we can't pay you." I said, "Okay, no problem." They said, "Well, we can give you a video portfolio." So I said, "I don't know what that is, but great." So I made a commercial for the Plainfield, Connecticut dog racing track. And I had to pretend to be on a date with somebody. And there were cameras, and there was makeup, and we had lines to memorize, and I thought, this is kind of fun. So I got all done, and they gave me this videotape, which was the size of like a small suitcase. And I took it home, but I had no way to play it. I never saw what was on it because I had no equipment to play this stuff on, and so I would take it into department stores and try to pop it into machinery there. Eventually, I just tucked it away. So then I started looking for work, and I got a call from the place where I'd done my student teaching, which was an excellent high school, Brookline High School. And they had a teacher leaving halfway through the year. They said, "Would you please come in and fill in for this woman who is going to be leaving on maternity leave?" And I said no 3 times, and finally I said, "Okay, I'll come in." And I did it for 6 months, and then I did it for a year, and then I did it for another year. And it just wasn't for me. I just hated the hours. I am not a morning person. This is a really good time for me to be talking. If this were a breakfast, I'd be in my pajamas and I didn't like the paperwork. I didn't like the AWOLs. I was 22 years old. They were 17 years old. I didn't know who I was for them. I actually got asked out to the junior prom. I played the I looked really young at the time. It was, all that testosterone around me. That was really tough. I gotta say, those teenage boys, holy cow. Anyway, it was intense. I just knew it wasn't for me, but I thought I would quit. But everybody said, "Don't quit. It'll get easier. Everybody goes through this." But I looked around, and I saw the people who were teaching, and trust me, if there were teachers in this room, my hat's off to you, because this is a real vocation, like becoming a nun. I mean, it is a real calling. And I could see the difference between me and them. I would never feel what they were feeling about teaching. And the only person who said to quit was my mother. My mother said, "Joyce, if you don't like this job, just quit and get another one and get some courage enough to really embrace yet myself. But my mother, Alice, often knew and had more confidence in me than I had in myself. And she led me forward without being overwhelming about it even. You know, she just saw me. And as soon as she said it, I knew she was right. So I quit cold. And I had the summer off because that's, you know, one of the perks of teaching, you get the summer off. And I thought, oh, I'll look around for something. And then there were three kind of semi-mystical things that happened that summer to me. And one was that I just flipped on the TV one day, and there was a show on called Evening Magazine. I don't know if you remember that show. Yeah, it was hosted by Robin Young and Marty Sender. It was ages ago, but it was the first magazine show of its type. And they were just regular people out in the field talking to interesting people like winemakers and people who were, you know, working on farms or running restaurants, and just interesting folks doing interesting everyday work. And I thought, oh, that looks like something I could do. But of course, that's just a fleeting thought in a million fleeting thoughts I was having that summer. And the next thing I did was make an appointment with the head of the communications department at Simmons College. Now, I didn't know the communications department at all because I didn't major in communications. And I always tell people, don't major in communications. It's counterintuitive, but I always feel like if you're going to major in communications, you need to double major because like communications and math, communications and business, communications and literature, history, political science, because at the end of the day, you're going to need something to communicate. Mm-hmm. So you need to be an educated person. Communications to me is like a vocational skill. So, and I was already doing plenty of communicating. I'm a talker, in case you haven't noticed. So I met with this man, anyway, the head of the department, and I said, so do you think I might and be able to have a career in television at the end of a 2-hour meeting? And he said, well, yeah, and I think I have a lead for you. There's a woman who graduated from Simmons last year. She's just started a brand new show on TV called Evening Magazine. I said, oh, I didn't know that show. I just happened to see it. But I didn't do anything about it. I didn't call. I didn't, you know. So about 4 weeks later, I'm still looking around. I actually went to a tea leaf reader who predicted that the third week of August was going to be very pivotal for me. I'm always very interested in all of these things. I've had my palm read, my tea leaves read, the lumps on my head read, the whole bit. And you know, I just take that for whatever it's worth. And 3 weeks later, my future mother-in-law, because I was also getting married that summer. It was actually a double wedding with my brother and his wife. And Richard and I were very close, remained very close. And we were getting married, and my future mother-in-law, who ran a stationery store, was preparing wedding invitations for a woman by the name of Nancy Glass, who was on a show called Evening Magazine. And she was leaving her job because she was getting married and moving out of state. And they had auditioned 40 people for this job, and they couldn't find anybody. And she told, you know, the woman preparing her wedding invitations, my future mother-in-law, about this. Adele told me. I said, oh, that's interesting. So that's the third time I've heard that name. And I'm thinking, you know, the universe is like coming at me. Sometimes there's just a lot of messages out there. You just have to know how to read them. I called up, I said, hi, I'm a teacher at work. I understand you have an opening. Oh, yes. Do you have a video portfolio? Well, yes. Why else would I be calling? So he said, well, bring it down. And I thought, okay. And I thought, where is that thing? And what's that? So I looked, I found it, I got all dressed up, I ran down into the studio on Solersfield Road, WBZ. I got in the front door, I got up to the security window, a little flap opened up, a hand reached out, I gave him the tape, and I thought, okay, that'll never be seen or heard from again. 3 weeks go by, I didn't hear anything. My mother said, Joyce, did you hear? And I said, no. She said, well, call them. So I called them. And they said, yeah, we looked at your tape. We couldn't tell much from it, but we need you to come in for an audition. So I went in for an audition. And the audition was, they said, be at the Swan Boats at 4:20 on Thursday afternoon. Don't wear black and don't wear white. and prepare an instant weekend. So I prepared an instant weekend. I turned on the TV to see what that even was. I watched the show, and I prepared it, like a doctoral dissertation, and it was all, I still remember some of the things that were on it. There was a pipe smoking contest, the things I made up. I wore red, not black, not white, and I was on time. And I get there, and there are 10 women there who are like tall and blonde and voluptuous, and they have their modeling portfolios, and they're in like stiletto heels, and I'm thinking, Kulhawik, they are not looking for you. But you have a good education, and you'll get a job maybe behind the scenes. So I watched the first woman who went out to audition. She was wearing all white. And I thought, they only gave us 3 directions. This could be easier than I thought. So I watched her. She was very good, and I was the next one to go up. And I was incredibly nervous because, of course, it was a TV camera, and they put a mic on me, and suddenly the whole reality of like, I panicked. And I had these index cards, and I thought, just put your hands in your pockets, and at least you look relaxed. But then my cards were in my pockets, and I forgot everything, and it was like, hello, I'm Joyce Kulhawik. So I finished as quickly as I possibly could, ripped the mic off, started to run away. And the producer jumped out of the truck, came running after me and said, hey, come back. I think you've got something we're looking for. And I said, what? Amnesia? I can't remember anything. And he said, no, just come back and just put those cards away and just stand there, and we're going to ask you questions on camera, and you're just going to talk to us. So I said, okay, fine. So I did that, and then I went home, and I didn't hear anything, and my mother said, Joyce, did you hear anything? And I said, no. I guess she said, well, call them up. And they said, yes, the producer wants to have lunch with you. So I said, okay, great. So we had a 2-hour lunch. We talked about everything, books and travel and all kinds of things. And finally, at the end of the 2-hour lunch, I said, so, Mr. Houghton, how will I know if I have the job? And he said, Joyce, you have the job. That's why we're having lunch. So, when I say clueless, no contacts, no networking, no experience, but whatever they saw was there. It turns out they wanted me to be on the air 3 times a week in these short little segments and to produce my own segments. They immediately doubled my salary from what I had been making teaching, which I thought was a fortune. I was making $8,000 a year. I'd never seen a sum like that before. But immediately, I felt at home with everything as I walked into the TV station. I mean, it was just the vibe, the pace, even the deadline pressure. And then producing this material was easy because I was a writer and I was a movie buff and a theater buff, so I had a sense of how to tell a story and drama, etc., etc. And then I could talk, and I knew about all kinds of things that somehow coalesced around this job. And I did that for 3 years. The hardest part was learning to be relaxed on television. And that took me a long, long time. Because the truth is, you really have to learn to be exactly who you are. I could never be an actress. I could never inhabit another persona. But I can more and more fully inhabit my own self day after day. And that's what happened until I was finally, they wanted to promote me into the news department and suggested that I be their consumer reporter. And I said, well, I could do that for you, but I don't really care about consumer issues. So, not really. I said, I can learn it all, but what I really care about are the arts. And if you want to do that, call me. And they said, don't you understand this is a promotion? And I said, yeah, but, I've already had a job I didn't care for. And so I knew when to say no. And sometimes you have to know when to say no so that you make room for when to say yes, or yes can come in. And it's so true. So I said no, and about 6 months later, they called me, and they said, you know what? We're going to do that. We want you to cover the arts in this market, full-time, every single night. on the air. We don't want just movies, theater, we want everything. Ballet, we want rock and roll, we want the opera, we want the museums, we want every night. And it turns out, I believe, I was the first full-time arts and entertainment person in the country. And it was the same year that Entertainment Tonight went on the air. But what I did was really different from what they were doing. I was never covering, well, I did cover showbiz in the sense that I did cover the Oscars and I covered the Grammys and all of that. But my goal was always to demystify this whole arena, which was the arts, and what artists have to say to us about the human condition, about the nature of this life that we live, about how movies reflect the culture back to itself so that we can see ourselves and talk about ourselves, and so that it stimulates ideas and thinking. This is my goal as a critic, not to be prescriptive, but to stimulate thinking and ideas and conversation so that we can refine how we see ourselves. And it is the artists who often give us a direct line to what's going on. They are the truth tellers, and I was very keyed into that. And because nobody knew anything about this, they left me alone to do whatever I wanted, which was so great. So that though I had deadline pressure every single night, which nearly killed me. I mean, I would be in a theater like at 10 o'clock at night or 10:15, and have to be on the air at 11:25 with a whole story, and and my lipstick on and everything, and having sat with an editor and written and all of that. That didn't bother me. I mean, that just didn't bother me. What was key was to be able to speak and to really be like a conduit for these artists. And because I wasn't ever going to be a concert pianist. I was never going to be, a ballet dancer. I'm not Baryshnikov. I'm not Picasso. But I knew enough about all of those things and had a feeling for it that allowed me to be an informed reporter on that particular beat, and I was able to create that beat. So in that sense, I found my voice channeled through all of these artists' voices, and I think it's a shame that we did that for 30 years, and then all the other stations started picking up on it, and at one point there were like 5 or 6 arts and entertainment reporters. I was the first hired and the last fired. In 2008, CBS was cutting back everybody. They were slashing and burning because TV sales were not what they had once been. Where there had been 3 or 4 stations, now there were like 1,004 stations. So they decided to get rid of the frills, the non-essentials. And of course, I don't think this is a non-essential, especially not in a city like Boston or Greater Boston. We have world-class institutions here: music, theater, movies, ballet, everything. And that we don't have a dedicated beat to that arena is kind of shocking to me. I mean, if you just watch the news, you think we were all rapists, robbers, and murderers. We need what the artists bring, so we understand what human beings are capable of. So there's my arts talk in a nutshell. But this had to do with really sort of staying close to myself and who I am. The other place where that helped me, where I learned so much from my mom about speaking up, had to do with another journey I never expected to take, and that is my cancer journey. So I am a 3-time cancer survivor, and this is a very, very bizarre thing because there is very little cancer in my family. I had 2 different kinds of cancer: malignant melanoma when I was 26 years old, like 10 days before my double wedding. And then I had, 10 years later, ovarian cancer. And then I had a recurrence of ovarian cancer. And I was misdiagnosed every single time because I fell outside of the statistical norms for those diseases. But each time, I would challenge the diagnosis until we got to the bottom line. I mean, the first time, I'll try to condense this story, but the first time I was watching TV. TV is somehow always pivotal. I was watching a show called The Phil Donahue Show. If you remember Phil, he invented Oprah. Phil was great. And he had a woman on who said she had started with a mole on her leg. And of course, it's 10 days before my wedding, and I look down, and I've got a big mole on my leg. I know it's brand new, it's been there a year, and it didn't hurt, it didn't itch, it wasn't bleeding. I mean, there was nothing about it except this woman said that. And a bell rang, you know, I mean, like one of those little intuitive things. And I said, why don't I just go to a dermatologist? It's on my skin. So I just wanted to cross all the T's and dot the I's before my wedding. Went to the dermatologist, he looked at it, he said, doesn't look like anything. I said, well, I want a biopsy. I knew that word. I want a biopsy. He said, okay, we can do that. In 10 days, I said, nope, I'm getting married. I need the results right away. I was always like this. So he said, well, I can take off a sample and then you'll have to carry it over to the lab yourself. And I said, no problem. So that's what he did. He removed half this mole, put it in a jar, it's floating around. My fiance and I are walking to the Chestnut Hill Mall over to the Chestnut Hill Medical Center, deposited this thing, and 2 days later, this doctor's boss called me rather urgently at Evening Magazine, where I was still working, and said they were 99% sure I had malignant melanoma. I needed to check myself into a hospital. They were going to do brain scans, liver scans. I said, what are you talking about? You never used the word cancer. I said, but he used the word malignant. So I said, are you telling me I have some sort of cancer? He said, yes. We're 99%. He went into this whole spiel again. And again, I was like, I said, well, I don't have any insurance. Is this going to be expensive? I was freelancing in between my teaching. And he said, oh, yes, this is going to be expensive. I said, well, I'm getting married. He said, no, you're not getting married. You're going into the hospital. I said, well, is this going to be painful? I mean, I didn't know what to ask. He said, oh, yeah, well, we're going to do great. I mean, every question had a bad answer. I had to put the phone down. Robin Young finished the conversation. I went home and started, packing. Called the other bride and my brother to tell them what was going on. And my future sister-in-law happened to be the chief radiation therapist at University Hospital. And she said, you need a second opinion. I'm going to put you in touch with a guy who's a specialist here. He's a surgical oncologist. His specialty happens to be melanoma. His name is Dr. Peter Deckers. I'm going to arrange for you to meet him first thing tomorrow morning. She did the whole thing. I go, and I thought, well, could there really be a difference of opinion about this? I mean, isn't cancer, is cancer, is cancer? What I have been learning. I went in, he looked, he said, I'm going to give you the good news and the bad news. So the bad news is this is a very vicious and aggressive tumor. It spreads very, very rapidly to the brain, et cetera, et cetera. I said, the good news is I think we may have caught this in time. And we are just now finding out that if you catch a melanoma at a shallow state, before it's really invading the bloodstream, we can take the rest of this off. And he said, but whatever we do, we have to consider saving your life first. That's got to come off right now. Can you handle a local anesthetic? I said, yeah, absolutely. They wheeled me in, put up a sheet, and he excised 17 stitches worth. And I limped down the aisle with the 17 stitches in my leg, and half high on Percocet. So he also gave my future husband something that looked like a staple remover, because he had removed those staples on our honeymoon, which he did in Barcelona in a honeymoon suite. And it was very romantic. So I thought, okay, well, wow, that's behind me. Thank God, 10 years go by, I'm doing a yoga workout in my bedroom, and suddenly I feel cold, and I think, I forgot to put the heat up, and look, the heat's up, it's me that's cold. Within a minute, I start getting racked with abdominal pain, and I jump into the car, I drive myself to the lady clinic, get in the door. They said I looked green when I came in. I didn't even know how I walked in. They said, oh, get me right in. They checked me into the hospital. They said, we think that this is an abdominal infection, and they put me on intravenous antibiotics. I stayed for maybe about 5 days. Then they released me with a clean bill of health after a full, thorough, internal, external exam. And I got home, and I just didn't feel myself exactly. I wasn't in pain. but I had a friend visiting me, and I said, I noticed that my stomach was a tiny bit off, but I was 35, and I thought, maybe I'm just gaining a little weight around the middle. This is one of the subtle signs of ovarian cancer. I mean, you can't tell. It looks like anything. I said, does this look normal for me? And she said, no, that is not normal for you. Because sometimes we forget what's normal for us. And I called my other doctor, and she said, we're going to get you back in the hospital. I think there's something going on there. Check me into the BI. They said, yep, that appendix has got to come right out. They wheeled me into surgery, opened me up, and it was not my appendix. It was a tumor, one tumor that they got at the earliest possible stage you could catch an ovarian cancer tumor, stage 1A, which was a miracle. They took it out, they removed one ovary, and see if there were men in the room, they'd be grossed out. So I said, can I have children? He said, yeah, have your family, and then come back and we'll do a total hysterectomy. And I thought, that's kind of conflicting signals there. They're worried enough that they want me to come back, but they're leaving this in, but they know what they're doing, etc. Stage 1A, no chemo, nothing. That decision nearly cost me my life, because about a year and a half later, I'm on an airplane, flying to Nairobi with my husband to go on safari in Africa. And as we're coming in for a landing, I'm racked with abdominal pain, and I'm thinking, what is this? Is this the flu? Did I eat a bad clam? Is this ovarian cancer? No good options here. Do I fly all the way back home? Do I check myself into a hospital in Nairobi? I ended up at the hotel for a couple of days and felt well enough to then go on the whole safari. We hiked into the Virunga Mountains. We met the mountain gorillas. I mean, we did the whole thing. I came back, called my doctors. They said, yeah, we think you've got pancreatitis. This diagnosis, they put me in the hospital for a few days, declared that I had the other disease was behind me, but they did a blood test, and a few weeks later, that came in, and it was really indicating that something was quite wrong, or it was probably a recurrence of ovarian. They scheduled me for surgery, but I never made the surgery. The night before the surgery, I was again racked with abdominal pain, and had to be rushed in, and we had an emergency surgery that night. So now I had a tumor that had ruptured 3 times, and there were pieces of it all over my abdomen. And this time the prognosis was very inconclusive. And I will never forget lying in that hospital room thinking, wow, this is like incredible. This is one of the hidden gifts in a way, but I was thinking, if I could just be able to take a walk in the woods this fall, I would be so grateful. I mean, suddenly everything comes down to, the baseline. They came back and they said, okay, we think that the prognosis is pretty good, and we removed everything, obviously, overnight hysterectomy, overnight, night sweats, the whole bit. And they said I would need chemotherapy, 6 months of chemotherapy, and they said you're going to lose all your hair. They were wrong about that too. I didn't lose my hair. It got a little ratty looking. But I kept it. I worked the whole time. I'd have 1 week down where I was really awful, and then 3 weeks where I was okay enough to work. But my hair really took a beating, and I remember hearing it come back to me. Somebody said, wow, that wig that Kulhawik is wearing is really awful. That's my hair. But then I wanted a second look surgery to make sure that everything worked. And they didn't want to do that, but this one doctor, Dr. Peter Ducker, said if you were my wife, you would go in there and we'd work again. And I said, okay, let's do it. And they went in, clean as a whistle. That was 32 years ago, and the doctors have said they could count on the fingers of one hand that people who fall into this category. I am still here, and I've been completely healthy ever since 1989 Christmas. I'm really sharing these stories to just let you know what I've learned, that doctors can be wrong, that you are in charge of your health, that if someone else makes a mistake, it's you who bears the consequences, not them. So don't ever be afraid to challenge. And sometimes, women have a hard time challenging. But a good doctor welcomes second opinions. They will facilitate second opinions. And there's new information coming out all the time. Be your own best advocate. Speak up. Lead yourself to be well. And don't worry that you're being this or that or whatever. Be your own best advocate. The hidden gift is that the most important thing was finding out how many people care about me, how many people reached out that I didn't expect, and how there's this unseen font of love and support out there for all of us that we don't know about. But these people are here all the time, ready to receive us. And that is all that this is about. It's about talking, it's about sharing, it's about we're all in this thing together. Nobody gets out of here alive. We just need to do the best we can with and for one another while we're here. So I am enormously grateful, and I am grateful to you for listening and hearing this story and passing it along. And there's only one other thing I want to say, and I'm going to stop talking, and that is, if you are in a situation where you are feeling ill or you are suffering, etc., and everybody handles this quite differently, you may not be a talker, but if someone wants to help, try to receive the support. Try to take it in. Because then when you're better, you can pass it on. You know, it creates this beautiful momentum in the world. So thank you for your beautiful momentum.
And for you, thank you for joining us.
Oh,
we really, really appreciate it. I could listen to Joyce Kulhawik's stories all day long, and I bet she's got more secrets. So thank you, Joyce, for making the trip here, helping us to celebrate International Women's Night. I really appreciate it. It was pure joy. And continue the battle, whatever those battles are going to be. Sharing all those arts and your opinions on those Arts and Critics Awards, and also please share more stories because they're really fascinating. So thank you for being with us.